Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into a topic today that, well, it touches so many people. It comes up all the time in health conversations. The connection between your thyroid and your weight. You know how people often think it's pretty simple? Like, oh, my thyroid must be off, that's why I gained weight. Or maybe the opposite, I lost weight because my thyroid went hyper.
Hmm.
It's usually seen as, a straightforward one-way street.
And that common understanding, it makes sense on the surface, right? Because thyroid hormones do have really powerful effects on metabolism. That part's true. But as we dug into these sources for this deep dive and we looked at a collection of expert material, research papers, even a tribute to the endocrinologist Dr. Hossein Garib, we found the reality is, well, it's much more complex
Mm-hmm.
and honestly much more fascinating. It's definitely not just the thyroid affecting your weight.
Exactly. That's our mission today, really, to unpack that complexity. We're exploring this intricate bidirectional relationship
Mm.
between thyroid function and body weight. We'll look at how weight changes can actually influence your thyroid function tests
Hmm.
and how those thyroid hormones regulate things like your metabolism and, body composition.
So why does this deep dive matter to you? Well, maybe you're personally navigating a thyroid condition, or perhaps you're focused on weight management, or maybe you're just really curious about how your body's systems interact. Understanding this two-way street is absolutely key. It helps make sense of what might be happening and what the science actually tells us.
Okay, so let's get into these sources. Where should we kick off this exploration?
Let's start with the direction that might be a bit less familiar to most people. How your weight or changes in your weight can actually impact your thyroid function tests, even when your thyroid itself is, producing hormones totally within the normal range.
Okay, wait, hold on. So our body weight isn't just sort of passively affected by the thyroid.
Hmm.
It can actively influence the thyroid system signals.
Precisely, yeah. The epidemiologic studies we looked at, they show a really consistent association here. If you look across populations, large groups of people considered euthyroid, meaning their core thyroid hormone levels are normal. There's a clear trend. As BMI or overall body weight increases, TSH, that's thyroid stimulating hormone, also tends to increase.
Huh.
Yeah. For example, one study by Kitahara and colleagues, it found that just increasing BMI by one quartile, so like one chunk of the population range, was associated with roughly a 3.8% to 4.0% increase in TSH. And this trend held for both men and women. They also saw increases in free T3, that's the active form of the hormone, with increasing BMI and waist circumference.
That's genuinely surprising. So putting on weight, even if you're still technically normal thyroid-wise, can nudge your TSH reading upwards. What about going the other way, weight loss?
The sources definitely confirm that. Weight loss is associated with decreased TSH levels. We see this pretty clearly in studies involving significant weight loss. Like, there was a study by Tian et al. Looking at patients after bariatric surgery. They had substantial weight loss over a year, dropping from over 110 kilos down to about 78 on average. And right alongside that weight loss, all their thyroid analytes, TSH, total T4, total T3, they all decreased significantly.
Okay.
And another study, this one by Kokak et al., focused on obese women who lost weight just through calorie restriction. After losing about 14 kilos on average over 7 months, their mean 24-hour TSH concentration, including the peaks, significantly decreased. Total T3 and free T3 levels also dropped.
That's really interesting because, well, the way the sources frame it, these changes in the thyroid tests, TSH going up with weight gain or down with weight loss, they're generally interpreted as a result of the weight change itself, not necessarily that the thyroid levels cause the weight change in those specific cases. It really highlights that the weight itself is doing something to the signals between the brain and the thyroid.
Exactly. It's a key piece of that bidirectional puzzle we mentioned.
Right. Now, stepping back a bit, it's also true, isn't it, that weight can change for loads of reasons that have nothing to do with your thyroid function at all, even if your levels are perfectly normal. What did our sources point to as common drivers of weight change that aren't directly tied to thyroid hormones?
Yes, absolutely. That's a crucial point. One major factor is simply age. Studies consistently show this natural tendency for weight gain as we get older. An Australian population study, for instance, found that over 5 years, men gained about 1.6 kilograms on average, women about 2.4 kilograms. And interestingly, while weight gain happened across all age groups, it was actually greatest in the younger adults over that fixed 5-year period.
Wait, so younger adults in that study gained more weight over 5 years than the older adults. That feels...
Well, it contradicts what a lot of people assume about aging and metabolism slowing down. It does seem counterintuitive, yeah. Another significant factor the sources highlighted is menopause. One study clearly showed that the transition to menopause is significantly associated with weight gain. For many women, that's when excessive weight gain really starts.
Hmm. And the sources also mentioned something intriguing about weight gain trends depending on the reason someone might be taking levothyroxine, even if they are technically euthyroid on the medication.
That's a great point, yes. The Jonklas et al. Study looked at weight changes over a year in different groups of people on levothyroxine or with normal function. They found that individuals with post-surgical hypothyroidism, so they needed LT4 therapy because their thyroid was removed, they actually had the most weight gain. More gain compared to, say, those with Hashimoto's who are on LT4, or those taking LT4 for TSH suppression for other reasons, or even compared to a group who are naturally euthyroid. So it suggests the underlying cause of why someone needs thyroid hormone replacement might influence weight gain trends, even when their blood levels are brought into the normal range by treatment.
Okay, fascinating. So we've established weight can influence thyroid markers and other things drive weight change too. Now let's pivot back to the more familiar side of the equation, how thyroid hormones actively contribute to weight regulation throughout the body.
Right. And like we hinted, it's not just about speeding up or slowing down the whole metabolism like one big dial. Thyroid hormones have really diverse effects on multiple systems involved in energy balance. This includes things like appetite, your basal metabolic rate, that's the energy your body burns just keeping the lights on at rest,
Right.
thermogenesis, which is your body generating heat, and lipid turnover, so how your body processes fats.
So it's much more spread out than just one central on-off switch.
Absolutely. It involves effects both centrally and, in the brain, particularly areas like the hypothalamus where T3 can directly stimulate food intake, and also peripheral effects in tissues all over your body. And of course, that classic picture still generally holds. Hypothyroidism usually leads to decreased energy expenditure, which contributes to weight gain, feeling cold. Hyperthyroidism, the flip side, leads to hypermetabolism, often weight loss, feeling hot.
And T3, the active hormone, seems to be a major player in driving these effects.
Yes, the sources really emphasize T3's critical role. It directly stimulates appetite. It's a primary determinant of your basal metabolic rate and how much oxygen you consume. It regulates metabolic efficiency, overall energy expenditure, and calorigenesis heat production. It's also involved in inducing thermogenesis, including in that specialized brown adipose tissue, and plays a key role in how your fat cells handle lipids.
Okay, let's zoom in on hypothyroidism first. What can someone typically expect regarding their weight when they develop hypothyroidism?
Generally speaking, developing hypothyroidism is accompanied by some weight gain. Like we said, it's linked to that decreased energy expenditure and reduced heat production, but it's also tied to symptoms like fatigue. If you're more tired, you're probably less physically active, right?
Makes sense.
And the studies back this up. Even having higher TSH values that are still within the normal reference range, that was positively associated with BMI in a big population study.
Yeah.
And for those with subclinical hypothyroidism, that's where TSH is elevated. But the free T4 and T3 might still be technically normal. Studies show they tend to have increased BMI. And, significantly, they showed the greatest amount of weight gain over a 5-year period compared to individuals who remained euthyroid during that time.
So even those early stages, or just having TSH creep up towards the higher end of normal, might be associated with weight trends. What about overt hypothyroidism, where the hormone levels are clearly low?
Weight gain is a very commonly reported symptom there. It actually has a high predictive value. The sources cite around 70.6% for diagnosing overt hypothyroidism. Studies show significantly higher BMI in patients with overt hypothyroidism compared to control groups without it. That Zulewski study, for example, found one group of hypothyroid patients who also had low T3 levels. Their mean BMI was around 27.2 compared to just 23.5 in the control group.
Okay, and what about situations where hypothyroidism comes on really rapidly, like when people stop medication to prepare for certain medical treatment?
Yes, studies have looked at that specifically too. Choi et al. And Son et al. Showed that weight and BMI tend to increase during those thyroid hormone withdrawal protocols. These are sometimes used before treatments like radioactive iodine or RAI therapy for thyroid cancer. The Son study found that the weight gain actually continued over the follow-up period in the group who went through hormone withdrawal, whereas weight stayed stable in the patients who received recombinant TSH or rTSH injections instead, which avoids making them hypothyroid. Just to give you numbers, the withdrawal group's weight went from about 61.3 kilograms at the start to 62.0 kilograms 3 or 4 years later, while the RTSH group stayed steady around 60.9 kilograms.
Okay, the weight gain with the onset of hypothyroidism seems pretty consistent across different scenarios. What happens then when it's treated, say with levothyroxine? This is often the point where people really hope, understandably, to lose any weight they gained.
That's a really crucial point and maybe a frustrating one for some people. While there is often a modest amount of weight loss when treatment starts, the sources are quite clear that getting fully back to your baseline body weight can be challenging. It doesn't always happen. And perhaps counterintuitively, the data suggests that over the longer term, patients often see more weight gain, even though they're being treated and their thyroid function is normalized on tests.
More weight gain, even on treatment.
Yeah. One of the most striking findings came from the Karma-Schultz study. They looked at newly diagnosed Hashimoto's patients treated with LT4. Over a year, yes, they saw a significant decrease in weight on the scale average dropped from about 83.7 kilograms down to 79.4 kilograms. However, and this is the crucial bit the sources emphasize, this weight loss was entirely due to a decrease in lean body mass, mostly muscle, not fat mass. Fat mass remained unchanged, even though measurements like resting energy expenditure and reported physical activity actually went up with treatment.
Wow, that's a really critical distinction. The number on the scale went down, but body composition didn't improve by losing fat, which is usually the goal.
Exactly. And the summary of other studies in the sources also shows pretty varied results with treatment for hypothyroidism. Some report modest weight or DMI decreases, others show no significant change at all. It really reinforces this idea that just starting thyroid medication doesn't guarantee you'll lose the weight gained, especially the fat mass, nor does it make it easy.
So why is that? Why is it so hard to get back to baseline? Or why might weight gain happen later?
Well, the sources list several potential explanations. It's likely multifactorial. One possibility is that the body starts defending a new, higher weight set point that was established during the hypothyroid period. Or maybe patients still experience some relative exercise intolerance even with normal hormone levels on paper. Other factors could be that standard LT4 therapy doesn't fully reverse all the metabolic changes caused by hypothyroidism at the tissue level. Or perhaps there's a sort of fixation of those unfavorable body composition changes that happened. And of course, you can't discount the natural progression of age-related weight gain, which is happening in the background for everyone.
Right. What about different types of treatment beyond standard LT4, like combination T4-T3 therapy or just T3 alone? Did the sources suggest those offer significant weight loss benefits for treated hypothyroidism?
Based on the evidence presented in these sources, combination therapy LT4 plus LT3 has generally not shown significant weight loss benefits compared to LT4 alone in most well-controlled trials. There were a couple of small exceptions mentioned, one trial where they aimed for a specifically low TSH target, and an older trial using desiccated thyroid extract, or DTE, that showed modest weight loss but hasn't really been replicated consistently. A more recent trial by Fan et al. Showed absolutely no significant change in weight in either the LT4-only group or the LT4-LT3 combination group over 6 months. As for T3 monotherapy, using only T3, one short 30-day trial did show a very modest weight loss, about 3%. So overall, the sources don't really position these alternative therapies as reliable strategies for achieving significant weight loss in treated hypothyroidism.
Okay, let's switch gears then. Moving to the other side, hyperthyroidism. This condition is generally associated with weight loss, right?
That's definitely the more commonly known effect, and yes, it's true. The sources confirm that active hyperthyroidism often leads to weight loss. And importantly, this isn't just fat. It can include loss of fat mass, muscle mass, and even bone mass. How much weight is lost can vary quite a bit, though. It depends on how severe the hyperthyroidism is, particularly how high the T3 levels get, and the balance between the hormone's effects on metabolic rate, fat processing, activity level, and appetite.
Ah, appetite.
Yes, studies illustrate the weight loss part. One study of Graves' disease patients found about 34% reported weight loss when they were diagnosed, averaging around 0.7 kilos, with a BMI drop of about 2.1 points. Other studies reported average weight loss ranging from maybe 2 kilos over 6 months up to over 7 kilos over a year.
But you mentioned appetite. So even with that metabolism running super fast, some patients might not lose weight. Or not much.
That's correct. It's a bit paradoxical, but the sources note that hyperthyroidism can actually be associated with an increased appetite, sometimes even a specific preference for carbohydrates. The extent of this appetite stimulation might really influence whether weight loss actually happens, or if the increased food intake sort of cancels out or at least dampens the effect of the higher metabolic rate. The sources also mention ghrelin levels, that's a hormone involved in hunger signals, tend to increase as patients get treated for Graves, which could potentially influence weight changes later on during or after treatment.
Okay, so active hyperthyroidism often means weight loss, but not always, depending on appetite. What happens to weight when hyperthyroidism is treated and those thyroid levels come back down to normal?
Right. This is where it gets really interesting, and it's kind of the mirror image of the hypothyroidism situation, but maybe even more pronounced. While weight loss often occurs with active hyperthyroidism, treatment almost universally leads to weight gain and significant shifts in body composition. Often, there's a rebound effect where weight not only returns to baseline, but can actually end up higher than it was before the person ever became hyperthyroid.
Higher than before. Wow.
Yeah. And the sources highlight that how much weight is gained can be influenced by several things. Factors include the person's weight before they got sick, how severe their hyperthyroidism was, lower TSH or higher free T4 levels were linked to more gain, how much weight they lost while hyperthyroid, how long they needed therapy for, and crucially, the type of therapy used.
The type of therapy matters here, too.
Very much so, according to these studies. The data consistently suggests that the definitive therapies, that's radioactive iodine, RAI, or thyroidectomy surgery, are often associated with greater weight gain compared to treatment with antithyroid drugs, or ATDs. For instance, one study showed thyroidectomy resulted in the biggest average weight gain over 10 kilos, compared to about 5 kilos for ATDs, or 4.5 kilos for RAI in that particular study. Another study found similar trends. The greatest gains were seen after surgery that required LT4 replacement afterwards, around 10.4 kilograms, and RAI that required LT4, 10.1 kilograms, compared to just ATDs, 4.1 kilograms, or surgery that didn't need LT4 replacement. And the sources also indicate this weight gain tends to continue during the follow-up period after initial treatment.
So fixing the hyperthyroidism often means gaining back the weight lost, and then potentially quite a bit more, especially depending on how it's treated.
Based on these studies, yes, that appears to be a very common outcome. And just like with hypothyroidism treatment, it's not solely about the number on the scale. Treating hyperthyroidism leads to really significant changes in body composition and metabolism as the body shifts out of that hyperdrive state.
What kind of changes?
Well, the sources report increases in both lean body mass, that's muscle rebuilding, and fat mass. And this fat gain includes both visceral fat, the type stored around internal organs, and subcutaneous fat, the kind under the skin. Multiple studies cited confirm these increases in both types of body mass. Skeletal mass can also increase after treatment as the body rebuilds bone density that might have been lost during the hyperthyroid phase.
Okay, and metabolically.
Metabolically, treatment leads to a decrease in resting energy expenditure and basal metabolic rate. Your body basically becomes more energy efficient again. It's not burning through fuel so fast. You also see changes in lipid profiles. Things like total and LDL cholesterol tend to increase back towards or sometimes above normal. Insulin resistance often improves, which is good, but ghrelin, that hunger signal, tends to increase, and leptin, a satiety or fullness signal, tends to decrease.
Huh. So the body essentially shifts from that state of, like, burning through everything rapidly, muscle, fat, bone, to a more standard energy efficient state. It rebuilds some muscle and bone, which is positive, but it also accumulates fat and sees these shifts in metabolic markers and hunger satiety signals that might encourage further weight gain.
That sums up the pattern observed in the sources quite well, yes. It's a major metabolic shift.
Okay. Given everything we've discussed, especially how powerful thyroid hormones are in impacting metabolism and weight, both up and down, it seems really important to address the idea of using thyroid hormone specifically for weight loss, when someone doesn't medically need it for hypothyroidism.
That's a critical point to cover. Is it ever a recommended strategy just for weight loss alone? Based on the sources we review, the answer is generally a very firm no. You typically don't see significant or sustainable weight loss with standard doses used to treat hypothyroidism unless the TSH level is pushed below the normal range, basically, giving more hormone than the body needs, creating a subclinical or even overt hyperthyroid state. And if TSH is suppressed by giving excess hormone, it comes with serious, potentially dangerous risks. The sources are very clear about warning against adverse bone effects like lowering bone mineral density and significant cardiac effects.
What kind of risks are we talking about?
Well, the sources list quite a few potential risks and adverse effects from using thyroid hormone when it's not medically indicated. These include serious heart issues like angina, atrial fibrillation, that's an irregular heartbeat palpitations, also decreased bone density leading to increased fracture risk later, plus symptoms like anxiety, insomnia, tremors, a whole host of issues associated with having too much thyroid hormone. It's simply not presented as a safe, effective, or recommended strategy for weight loss on its own in any of the material we looked at.
Okay, wow. So this deep dive has really shown just how complex this whole thyroid-weight connection is. It is absolutely not the simple one-way street that I think many people assume it is.
Indeed, it's far from it. We saw how weight changes themselves, even within the normal thyroid range, can influence those key thyroid markers like TSH and free T3. And we reinforced how profoundly thyroid hormone influences metabolism, appetite, body composition, all those different aspects. We also make sure to note that weight changes definitely happen independently of the thyroid, too, due to common factors like just getting older or going through menopause.
Right. And the picture when it comes to actually treating thyroid conditions is so much more nuanced than just fix the hormone levels and everything goes back to normal.
Hmm.
With hypothyroidism treatment, yeah, there might be some initial weight loss, but it could be modest and surprisingly linked to changes in lean mass, not fat. And then weight gain later on is actually common. And with hyperthyroidism treatment, gaining weight back often too, or even above where you started, seems frequent. And it comes with these significant shifts in both fat and muscle mass and all those metabolic markers.
Exactly. The sources really highlight this overall tendency. Even when thyroid hormone levels are normalized through treatment for either condition, there often seems to be a tendency for weight gain over time. And once that weight, particularly fat mass, has been gained, it can be really challenging to reverse.
Hmm.
The sources also pointed out that as of now, we don't have some kind of magic thyroid mimicking drug that produces weight loss without causing significant unacceptable side effects.
So what does all of this mean for you listening? I think it means approaching that thyroid-weight connection with, well, patience and a holistic view, understanding that, yes, hormonal balance is absolutely crucial, but recognizing that weight management involves this incredibly complex interplay of so many factors:
Hmm.
genetics, lifestyle, other hormones, those appetite signals we talked about.
Hmm.
It extends far beyond just getting your TSH number into the normal range.
Right. And considering just how intricate the body's whole weight regulation system is, and how these different thyroid therapies impact body composition in ways that go way beyond just the number on the scale, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other significant factors might be playing an even larger role in long-term weight management, especially once thyroid function itself has been stabilized? Definitely something to mull over as you reflect on this deep dive.